So I'm not going to talk too much about what Wikipedia itself is, because if I ask the question how many of you use it, I'm sure everyone would raise their hand. So I think you all know what it is. It's run by a nonprofit organization. It's funded by donations. Actually, our annual operating budget is about $30 million, and all of that pretty much comes from individual donations at about $25, $30. And that operating model allows us to basically just focus on doing what we think is best for the internet, and doing everything that we do as open source technology, and basically focusing on bringing free knowledge to every person on the planet, which is our core mission. And my department is responsible for the technology aspect of Wikipedia. Like I said, it's all open source, and I'm going to talk about some of the more exciting developments that are coming, not so much about the stuff that exists today, although some of the stuff that I'm talking about is very tangible right now, and some of it is less tangible. So I'm going to talk about 3 challenges that we're facing, and I'm going to start with editing. So those of you who've raised your hand, you've seen this before. This is actually editing a page on the English Wikipedia about the moon Europa. And as you can see, what you see when you click edit is kind of this gobbledygook that if you've never seen it before, it kind of looks like programming language. It's very confusing. It's not very intuitive. You have to spend a lot of time kind of scrolling around, trying to figure out what other people have done before, trying to make sense of it. And that is part of the usability issues that we're trying to address. So it gets even more complicated if you actually edit in a language other than English, of course. So this is in Urdu. In this case, you're talking about a right-to-left language, so you've got all the challenges of right-to-left. You actually can see here that in right-to-left language, you also mix in things like HTML tags here. So you've got the right-to-left of the language, and then you've got the left-to-right of the HTML. It gets very, very messy very quickly and very confusing. One of the nice things about Wikipedia is that we are doing our best to support these languages well, and to actually make everything look reasonably nice and right to left and make it work reasonably well. But it still requires a lot of effort to optimize that user experience. So this is a screenshot of the new editor that we're working on. It's called the Visual Editor, and it basically creates an environment that's a lot more like what you would expect from, say, Google Docs, where you can just edit and it looks exactly what it will look like in the final page. You don't have to learn markup. You can just use it as you would a word processor. And so it has the standard toolbar functions up there, and we're continually expanding and extending it with new features. So right now it's got a pretty basic, bare bones feature set for basic text formatting, and we'll add tables and images and such in the coming months. And it's not on English Wikipedia yet or any of the main Wikipedias. It's right now on a wiki called mediawiki.org, which is where we develop our software, but that's where you can test it. And also, I forgot to mention the link that was at the very beginning here. Everything that I'm talking about, every URL, every link of everything that I'm talking about, you can find here. So if you write anything down, you just need to write this down, and I'll put it back on screen at the end as well, so you have a chance. So you don't have to worry about Googling things while I'm talking. It's all on that page. So as you can see, we're building things like these little pop-up inspectors, as we call them, which are made for interacting with the text, in this case adding a link to another page, and we'll create new interactive tools for adding images and other things like that. So this entire editing environment we're building not just for Wikipedia, like everything we do is open source. So any content management system that you develop, any blogging engine that you develop, you could use the same editing technology that we're creating for Wikipedia to make it. What makes this so hard? Why does it take us 10 years since the existence of Wikipedia to even seriously start working on it? Well, part of the challenge, if you look back at the markup here, is that this is actually very powerful stuff. It does a lot. So what you're actually expressing here, in this case, in the markup that you're seeing here, is that you're loading another page called Infobox Planet, and you're giving it a bunch of key value pairs, and you're basically saying, please render it in this beautiful table formatting that's standardized across all articles that are about planets. So it's a lot of complexity that is hidden here underneath. So Wiki Markup can do things that you can't do in a word processor. they're just impossible. Like if you're creating Word documents, you can't do what you're doing in this document. There's other complexity in here, standard formatting for citations according to standard mechanisms, embedding of micro formats for machine-readable metadata for citations. Like it's very, very powerful stuff. And so mapping this all against the visual editing environment is hard. But beyond being difficult, it's also the case that we don't want to force people to use the new editor. We want to give people the option to continue using this, because if we forced everyone to use the new editor, a lot of people would just leave and say, screw you, I'm not going to use your new software. I'm very happy with what I'm doing right now. So it would be very upsetting for a lot of people if we just took away the technology that they've used for the last 10 years, especially at a time when it's going to not immediately do everything that they're used to being able to do. So we have to continue to support this version of the page while also enabling people to edit in the new mode, the visual editing mode. And that adds a ton of complexity. Why? Because what you want to do is you want to basically back and forth convert between one version of the page and the other. So if you take an example of this wiki markup here, so this formats the page in a number of different ways. It's add a little bit of style sheeting to it. And what you actually want to do is you want to take this, so this is the formatted version of what I just typed, and you want to round trip it, as we call it, and convert it back to the original wiki text. If you can't do that, you can't edit with two different editing interfaces simultaneously, because you'll have data loss in between. And so what we're doing right now is we're doing a lot of these round trip tests against real Wikipedia articles to see if they can actually be cleanly edited in this new environment. And we're building a comprehensive test suite to do this. So that's the technical complexity underneath this endeavor. So it's pretty hard to do right, but we're making good progress on, and in December you'll start seeing this on English Wikipedia for a limited set of pages to play with. The other aspect that I mentioned implicitly earlier is things like input methods, font selection, things that enable you to use Wikipedia and other projects in your own language without having to install extra software to make it work. So we're working on a tool, this is a screenshot of this tool, called the Universal Language Selector, which basically allows you to pick languages, pick fonts, pick input methods, all in one place, and then use them as you're editing Wikipedia. Ideally, it will give you sensible defaults depending on which of the wikis you're on. So if you're on Hindi Wikipedia and you don't have an input method installed that lets you type in Hindi, you can just turn the input method on here and you can type in Hindi. Similar for Kannada, Malayalam, etc. So we actually already support these input methods on most of our Indic language wikis, and we're now improving the user experience around a lot of this functionality. So editing is not just about making something like Google Docs. It's about actually making it possible to work in your own language without having to worry about the technical aspects of it. And editing is also not just about the usability of the editor, but it's also about learning how to use the site as a whole. So at the Wikimedia Foundation, we have an entire team that's dedicated to small experiments that are helping people to become more engaged and to learn to edit Wikipedia. So there are small things that we tried out in the last few weeks, like things like, okay, what if we give you a little positive notification every time you make an edit? Will that help you be more active as an editor? One thing we're prototyping right now is this new system that will come up after you've made an account, which will teach you how to edit. So it's basically giving you things to do and walks you through the steps of making edits to Wikipedia. And this is a mock-up. It's not real yet, but the idea here is that it would give you tips like how to make spell check edits, how to make copy edits to a Wikipedia article, how to improve it. So it's not just about the technology to edit. It's also about the technology to learn how to function in Wikipedia, how to become a productive contributor. And it's not just about making these changes. It's also about letting you know when something important is happening. So we're building a new system which is called Echo. And the goal of this system is to give you notifications in real time when something happens that's important to you. Right now, Wikipedia doesn't give you a lot of this kind of real-time feedback. If you make changes in Wikipedia, it doesn't tell you very much what's going on. So the idea is here to give you a little set of notifications, like kind of like Facebook, that come up in the top right corner, and you can click on it, and it pops up. Okay, so-and-so just reviewed the page that you worked on, or so-and-so just sent you a message, or this person just reverted a change you made. So you have an understanding of what's going on around you, because one of the things that we found when we study people editing Wikipedia is that people really struggle to understand what's going on around them. When they start editing, they don't have a mental model of how the site works yet, and so it takes them a while to figure things out. And this will help, we hope, new users to really understand, oh, this just happened, so how do I go about responding to that? But also, even as an experienced editor right now, when I use Wikipedia, I have to click around like 10 million times to find the right thing where something happened. This gives it to you in one place. So this is the kind of functionality that we're working on to make the site experience more intuitive. The other challenge that I wanted to talk about is mobile. So mobile is interesting to us for a number of reasons. One is that it enables us to reach hundreds of millions of people who we've not been able to reach before, in places where maybe folks have never had regular internet access, but they are now getting online using mobile phones. So we have programs at the Wikimedia Foundation just to work with mobile carriers around the world to build relationships with them, where we say to them, why don't you make it free for your users to go to Wikipedia on their phone? Even if it's like an old feature phone that doesn't have a proper web browser, it should be possible to just pull up an article, maybe even split it. Yes, thanks for that. Maybe even split it into little components and send it out as SMS messages. So using these business relationships, we're basically giving people around the world, especially in developing countries, free access to Wikipedia. It's called Wikipedia Zero. And we've actually got conversations with carriers in India happening right now, and we've got about 230 million mobile phone users around the world who potentially have access to Wikipedia for free on their phones today using this program. So that's just getting the content out there. But the problem with Wikipedia on a mobile phone is that it isn't actually yet an interactive experience where you can contribute to the content. It's an experience where you can consume, where you can read the content, but it doesn't yet allow you to make changes. And it's inherently, of course, very hard to make changes from a mobile phone. You might have only a numbers keyboard, you might have no keyboard, a touchscreen keyboard, you get a very small device, a very small screen. So what can you actually do? Well, the kinds of things that we're experimenting with are in part focused on what are the actual positive aspects of a phone that you can only do using a smartphone, but that are very hard to do otherwise. And for example, on a smartphone, by definition, you almost got the camera that comes with the phone. By definition, you almost got the GPS that comes with the phone. So that gives you the ability to take a picture, have the geo-coordinates of the thing that you're photographing, and have the internet connectivity you need to publish it. That's a pretty amazing set of capabilities if you use it right. And so in September, we had this in September, we had this photo competition called Wiki Loves Monuments. It took place in about 30 countries around the world, including India. Can I ask anyone here who took part in Wiki Loves Monuments this year? Achal, Sibrand, Alida? Anyone not from the usual suspects? Okay. Yesterday we had 4 or 5 folks at our technical event who had participated, which was very nice to see. We actually got a few thousand photographs from India. So what's Wiki Loves Monuments? It's a photo contest where people take images of protected sites and buildings in their geography and upload them to our media repository, which is called Wikimedia Commons, under a Creative Commons license that allows anyone to use them for any purpose. So it's basically a cultural heritage project of documenting the world. And this year we had something like 15,000 people participating. We had something like 350,000 photos uploaded through this program. And all of them freely licensed, freely reusable, which is pretty awesome. It was actually recognized as the world's largest photo contest by the Guinness Book of Records. Yeah, so it's pretty nifty. And we built a mobile app this time around. We got 3,000 mobile uploads for Wiki Loves Monuments. So this app basically made it possible to get out your phone and say, okay, what's around me that would be useful for Wikipedia? Can I take a picture of that and just upload it? So that was sort of our first ever foray into actually making it possible to contribute rich media using your phone. But it was very constrained to that purpose, the Monuments contest. So we're now thinking about how we can extend this. So at the hackathon yesterday, actually a volunteer who came out for the event built this little mock-up that you see here, and we're now working on actually implementing this, which is a Wikimedia Commons application for just browsing photographs, browsing media on your phone, but also doing useful work, uploading new media, but also curating, which is a big part of what we're about. We're not just dumping stuff on the internet. We want to make it useful. We want to delete things that are inappropriate or not of value to what we're trying to do. So what you would do is you launch this application and you kind of swipe through the images that have been uploaded. You can say, this one seems very useful, so let's feature it. This one seems not very valuable, so let's remove it. So this is the kind of thing that we think is actually very suitable to do on a phone, whereas the editing experience would probably not be as enjoyable. So let's try to focus on the things that phones are really good for. With that said, we are experimenting with mobile editing. We actually rolled this change out a couple of weeks ago to our mobile site for the smartphone, which lets you make small changes very easily. The way you can see it is you have to first switch into the beta, which you can get access to if you tap this thing in the top left and then tap settings and then activate the beta. And then you have to log into the site. And then you'll see a little edit link appear on pages that you can use to actually make small changes. This is still very, very early prototype. We're iterating over it and trying to see what users actually want to do. But the idea here is split it up. So if you want to just delete a paragraph, remove a word, make a small change, at least that should be easy. It's never going to be easy to make really, really comprehensive edits on a phone. Like imagine doing real research while you're on the go. You're just not going to have the ability to do it. But it is going to be possible to make small copy edits, so we should facilitate that. So that was mobile. The third challenge that I want to talk about is data. Data is, go ahead, Arjuna. I'm sorry, how much of the... what are the actual metrics? What's the data? Yeah. So far what we're seeing... Sure. So the question was, when we do programs like Wikipedia Zero, where we make Wikipedia Access available for free, what is the impact that it actually has on readership? And the answer is that so far what we're seeing is that in the places where we have those relationships, the users of those carriers use Wikipedia far more often than the folks who are not on those carriers, so like 60-70% in some cases. Now, those numbers are still not huge because the folks who use Wikipedia in the first place in places like Kenya, it's a pretty small number still. So our challenge in part with Wikipedia Zero is to even make people aware of the fact that Wikipedia exists, it's useful to people, and how to get to it. Because while we might have that knowledge very widespread, even in India, that might not be the case in Kenya. So a lot of the effort that we're doing with our carriers is precisely focused on trying to get those numbers up by doing marketing. In Uganda, they even had billboards across cities saying, you can get an encyclopedia on your phone, here's how, it's free. In other places, they're doing SMS messages to folks saying, try Wikipedia, request an article now. It's things like that that we hope will increase usage and help people be aware that as long as they have a phone, even if it's a very old phone, they can actually get access to millions and millions of articles about every imaginable subject, which is a pretty amazing thing if you consider what the world looked like 20, 30 years ago when these technologies didn't exist. So I want to talk about data. So going back to this earlier example, I used the expression key value pairs, which is a technical expression which basically says, here's a key adjectives, here's a value European, here's a key discovery, here's a value yes. Key value pairs are a way to define data, to split data, to structure it. And so in this case, you've got a bunch of data about a planet that is split in these key value pairs. But the reason that we're using this formatting right now in Wikipedia is purely for presentation purposes. There's nothing that happens with this data that makes it usable for any other purpose than loading the article, which is kind of sad. All right? You've got this beautifully structured, or beautifully is perhaps an exaggeration, but you've got this structured data, but you're not doing anything with it. So why? Well, that's because the motivation that we originally had for doing this was primarily to be stylistically consistent across Wikipedia, to have the same kinds of table formatting and so forth. But it turns out that by doing this, we're actually adding a lot of structure to Wikipedia already, adding a lot of data. So if you wanted to list all planets by their orbital characteristics, you should be able to do that because this data is in here. It's just not surfaced in a way that makes that possible yet. And in fact, there are all kinds of folks who've taken this data and done stuff with it. So if you go to Google and you type in Europa, you'll actually get a bunch of structured data, and you can't read it, but it says here in tiny gray letters, Wikipedia. So Google has spent a lot of money to actually extract the data from Wikipedia and to repurpose it for purposes such as showing little information boxes on search results. There's a project called Dbpedia, which is an open source project, which has taken a lot of the structured data and cleaned it up and curated it and made it available for various purposes. So people have put a lot of effort into looking at this data and doing things with it. And in fact, doing things with it that arguably are a little bit of sort of ambiguous value to the free and open community. Because in this case, Google is sort of saying, okay, we'll just give you what you need and now you can go away. But where's the edit link? Where's the ability to contribute things back? So we have to be part of this. And we can't just let other people take the stuff and extract it and repurpose it. We should provide useful value to the world so that folks have continued reasons to interact with the data. And so there's a very important project in this respect that actually just went live a couple of weeks ago. It's called wikidata.org. I'll talk a little bit about it. So Wiki Data is actually a project that is not organized by the Wikimedia Foundation, which is pretty powerful when you think about what it means, because the entire project is funded and developed by a Wikimedia chapter organization in Germany, Wikimedia Germany. But we, of course, run it on our service. So it's a very beautiful partnership between one of our nonprofit partner organizations and the foundation in San Francisco. And so it really is possible for others to build technologies that we end up using on our websites. So Wikimedia Germany is enhancing and improving this technology, and what it does right now, the problem that it solves right now, is a limited problem. The problem that it solves today, or rather that it will properly solve in about 1-2 months' time, is the problem of the language links that you have in Wikipedia articles. Who of you has noticed the links on the left side of Wikipedia articles that go to like other language versions of articles? Can you raise your hands, please, if you have? Okay, so if you haven't noticed them, like if you go to an article, let's say again about Europa, you look on the left side, scroll down, you see versions of this article in other languages. Those are not translations. It's the same subject that is being described by Wikipedia authors in that language. It may or may not be a translation. In most cases, it is not. It's just other people writing about the same thing. The way these work technically right now, these connections between articles, is that every single article in Wikipedia, every copy of this article about Europa has a copy of this list of links. So every time you add one or you remove one, you have to update like 20 or 30 or 40 or however many versions of this article there are, which is very labor intensive and very inefficient and very prone to error and very frustrating for folks who work on Wikipedia. So Wikidata said, this is the first problem we'll solve for Wikipedia. We'll just make that much easier. We'll give you a single place on the web where you can update what articles exist about a given subject. And so that's the problem that it solves today. So if you take this, I didn't have an article about Europa, so I picked this one instead. So if you take this, then you see here all the different languages in Wikipedia that have an article on the subject, and you can edit or remove or add them. And this is not the standard Wikipedia editing interface. This is actually structured data underneath already. And the way it'll work is you just add it here and it'll just magically appear everywhere it needs to appear. So that's great. That's a starting point. But really the problem that the Wikidata folks are trying to solve in the long run is a lot of this other structured data. So let's take all the articles about countries. Every country has a population. Every country has a GDP. Every country has a currency. Every country has a lot of structured characteristics. And it should be possible to just ask Wikipedia, hey, Wikipedia, show me a list of countries ordered by GDP. And you can do that today, and the list exists, but it's manually maintained as text by human beings and robots in a very, again, labor-intensive and inefficient and error-prone process. And it's also only done in languages where there are enough people to care to do it. When you have a tool like this, one of the powerful things about it is that it actually makes knowledge more universally accessible by means of providing a lot of the language-independent information in a single place. Population numbers don't have to be translated. GDP numbers don't have to be translated. As long as you've got a source, as long as you've got accurate data, you really just have to make sure that the presentation of this information is correct and understandable in the different languages. So one of the powerful ideas behind Wikidata is that you add a lot of the structured information in one place, and then you can, for example, if you wanted to create an article in Malayalam or Kannada or even Swahili, or whichever language you wanted to write in, you could just say, I'm writing an article about Germany. Hey, Wikidata, give me all the standard structured data about Germany. Give me the population stuff, the GDP stuff, and just put it in the right beautiful table that it should show on the right-hand side. All I have to do is translate the labels, and it'll just work. So that's the idea, and that's the direction that we want to go with Wikidata. So it really will bootstrap and help make knowledge more accessible. It will make it more straightforward to maintain a single copy and to correct mistakes if we see them, and to maintain authoritative sources for this data. So once again, everything that I talked about, you find links to on this page. So I'm going to leave it up for a little longer if you want to take a note. Everything that we do is open source, no exceptions. Every single piece of code that we write is under usually the GPL version 2, sometimes other different open source licenses. You can use it for any purpose. You can extend it, and you can build upon it. And we ask you to do so if you want to get involved. There are many ways to get involved, whether it's writing code, writing translations of software. There's a site called translatewiki.net. If you want to hear more about this, the guy in the green shirt here can tell you all about it, where you can go and create translations of software in your own language, whether it's the main Wikipedia software or other software that you use. And you can get involved in design. You can get involved in, of course, the editing itself as well. So there are many ways that you can be part of this. And if you're really exceptional and you want to make it your lifelong commitment, or at least a significant chunk of your life commitment to be part of this, we're also hiring. So come talk to us. We have lots of positions open. We're still a small-ish organization, but we're no longer as small as we used to be. We're now about 130, 140 people, which makes me really excited because it means that we're able to move on a lot of different fronts and create lots of good open source code for the world. So that's me talking, and I'm going to open it up. So let me know what you want to know. Everything that you want to ask is fine, even if it's not related to the specific technologies that I mentioned.
There's an app that I've been using for some time now, a Wikimedia Commons app, but that's not developed by you, is it? It's to upload
the Share with Commons app?
Yeah, it's just an upload.
Do you know what it's called?
Wikimedia Commons.
I think that maybe UV is up. So UV is a volunteer. Do you not think so, Amir?
This, no,
okay.
This has existed now for about maybe a year and a half or 2 years.
There are a couple of apps that have been built by volunteers,
sure,
which is awesome and great.
So the Commons app that you're developing will have
actually
upload.
It was started now as a proper project by 2 volunteers at the hacking event that we just did. And it'll be continued by those volunteers, but we will support them with staff at the foundation as well.
But it includes upload.
Yes, exactly.
But with because this is like upload without any use of GPS or any other kinds of capabilities of the smartphone.
No. Everything will be much nicer in the long run.
The video feature that's been introduced?
Yes, absolutely. So this has been a long time coming. Video in Wikipedia has been pretty badly broken and limited in its capabilities for a long time. Part of the reason for that is that we actually limit video uploads on Wikipedia to formats that are freely licensed. So we don't accept video file formats that are patent encumbered. And most video on the web is under patent encumbered formats, which means that to actually produce, sell video in those formats, you may have to pay licensing fees for encoding, although you don't realize it as a user. There are restrictions on those formats, and as a free and open organization, we're saying we want to support free and open formats that don't have those restrictions. No. Most of the common video formats are just saying royalty-free playback for the whole world, but once you start doing large-scale commercial activities, you got to pay. And that's still not okay with us. Like we're saying, the format of video on Wikipedia should be completely free. Nobody should be restricted in any way. So we use video in a format called Ogtheora. I'll talk more, I'll explain. So the format that we've used for a long time is called Ogtheora. It's been around for a long time. And one of the other problems with video, I wouldn't characterize this as a problem, but it's a characteristic of video on Wikipedia. One of the other problems, though, an actual problem, is that when you uploaded video into Wikipedia previously, it would stay in the resolution that you uploaded it in. So if you have like a high quality camera and you take like a really high resolution video of this event, and you upload it, that's great. It's a high resolution video of an event, but most people don't have an internet connection fast enough to actually play it back. So what we just deployed on Wikipedia and our other websites is a technology that at least addresses those two issues. One, it adds support for another free format called WebM, which has been developed by Google. So you can upload a video in WebM form now, as well as Ogtheora. So that's two free formats. It should be relatively straightforward to convert video to either one of them if you need to, and we'll make it easier over time as well. And the other problem that we solve for is the transcoding, as it's called, into multiple resolutions. So when you upload a high-resolution video, it'll now generate a 360p, a 480 and 720 resolution copy of that video in both formats. So if your browser supports OGG, which is Chrome, and Firefox, if your browser supports WebM, you will be able to just play those videos, and you'll be able to play them at a bandwidth that makes sense for your connection. And finally, we've added support for subtitling. So you can just add a subtitle file to a video in a file format called SRT, and it's a standard format. So you can add subtitles in multiple languages if you want, and the video player lets you switch back and forth between the different subtitles. One of the nice things is you can actually use full wiki formatting in those subtitles, so you can add links and other things in the subtitles to explain things. So it's actually pretty powerful now. So you should try it out. Actually, if you go to comments.wikimedia.org, I think they've got a video of the day right now, so you can see in your browser if it works and tell us if there are problems. I'm sure there's still a few issues left, but it should be a much nicer experience than a few weeks ago even.
You spoke about the data challenge. I'm a journalist, and one of the reasons I come to Wikipedia often is for data. What kind of assurance does Wikipedia give? Not assurance in terms of legal terms, but comfort level about the integrity of the data itself. How do I know that this data is usable and I won't be in trouble for using it?
Are you talking about accuracy?
Accuracy, exactly.
Yeah, sure. So in general, Wikipedia is following a very different model than traditional publishing processes. So in the traditional publishing process, the model of ensuring accuracy is typically internal gatekeepers, reviewers, editors. So you're writing a newspaper article, you're submitting it to your editor, they may have to go through an additional process, and then after some time it gets published. That's the old school way of doing things. The problem with that is that it doesn't scale. If you want to actually build an encyclopedia that describes every imaginable subject in every language on the planet, you can't just have a bunch of gatekeepers and control. It doesn't scale. It'll lead to its own set of biases, because those folks have their own biases, and it just won't work. And nobody has succeeded in doing it before Wikipedia. All encyclopedias that have come before have been at a much, much, much smaller scale, orders of magnitude smaller. Like Encyclopedia Britannica has about 100,000 articles compared with like 35 times the amount of coverage in English Wikipedia alone. And of course, Wikipedia is in 250 languages. So if you want scale, you have to look at different models. The Wikipedia model turns the old school model on its head. Instead of saying, before you publish, you have to go through a bunch of review, it says, after you make a change, there are a bunch of community processes to review changes and improve upon them. So the idea is to open up the review and give the community a ton of tools of saying, okay, once an edit has been made, let's make sure if it contained, for example, certain words, it'll be automatically flagged. So people can review those lists of edits that have been flagged as containing those words. So-and-so has just been labeled a child molester. That's probably not true. Let's go in and review if that's an accurate edit or if that's libel, and in that case, remove it immediately. So the goal is to reduce the time that it takes to fix an issue to as minimal as possible, and to bring as many people as possible into the process of constructing the world's narrative about itself. So,
is there an intermediary phase where the data is unchecked in the system?
Yeah, absolutely.
So I might be the unlucky fellow who actually comes into
absolutely. You might go in and you might find an article and might say, that's terrible, this is inaccurate information. So you should absolutely not treat Wikipedia as an authoritative source. You should not go there and say, this is definitely true. You should look at the history. You should look at the edits. You should look at the sources, which is really the fundamental model upon Wikipedia, upon which Wikipedia is based, which is our policies say that everything that you say, you should add a citation for it. You should add a source for it. So again, the scalability is achieved by A, having lots and lots of post-publication review by a self-correcting and self-healing community, and B, also by trusting the readers to exercise their own judgment. So it is not the case that we're saying to folks, go to Wikipedia, learn anything you want, it'll be true. In fact, if you take that attitude for any publication, you're an idiot. Like, you should not. Like, you should not trust anything that you read blindly. You should always question and apply good judgment. So as Wikipedia, we're saying, apply good judgment. Look at the sources. Look at the citations. It's a collaboratively constructed document. Look at how it was constructed. Try to figure out whether you want to trust this information or not. Which is really, if you think about it for a little, the process you should apply to almost anything you read almost anywhere.
I just wanted to ask, what are the processes you have, or what systems do you use to check what changes you've made have, what kind of implications they have on users and then the usability of Wikipedia?
What are the systems and processes for?
That you have. So if you make changes either on the site or on the mobile, how do you track how that affects the usability?
How it affects the usability, or?
And how do users sort of respond to these changes and?
Right. So, from the usability perspective, purely, so the usability, the way I interpreted that, would be, do users like it? Do they understand it? Is it intuitive? Do you mean that by usability, or? Yeah, for sure. So, the way we look at usability is by testing a lot. So what we do is two things. One is collect a bunch of data whenever we push out a feature, as much as we can get our hands on. So we'd like to know, after we roll out a feature like mobile editing, how much mobile editing are we seeing? What kind of mobile edits are we seeing? So right now with the little experiment, it's not very much, but the quality is okay. It'll probably shift in the direction of a lot but poor quality if we get the equation wrong. And we want to get the equation to a reasonable level. So that's the purely data-driven view of things. The other view of things is qualitative, which is to actually ask people to make a mobile edit and watch them doing it, and to ask people to use any feature and watch them doing it. So we do a lot of that as well. If you're in the business of developing software, you should know that there are now a lot of ways that you can do this very cheaply. So it used to cost a lot of money to rent out what was called a usability lab. They still exist. Lots of people still use them. Where you have cameras set up and you film a user using a piece of software. You don't have to do that anymore. For a lot of small-scale, quick, easy testing, what you can do is use a service like usertesting.com or UI.com, and basically those services that you just say, hey, I want to get 5 testers to use this website, and I want to get screen recordings of them using it, and review those screen recordings and see what comes out of it. And so you look at them and say, okay, everyone is clicking this link and is getting this wrong. We probably should fix that. So you review them after the fact. So that's how we look at usability. Does that answer your question? Or?
So I missed the initial part while you were setting up, while I was setting up, sorry. So if I understand right, you're trying to transition from being a pure source editor to being a WYSIWYG editor, which will then start working on other devices, which is why you're doing a lot of cross-conversion tests. Is that right?
I didn't understand most of what you just said.
Sorry. So if I heard the first part right, currently Wikipedia works on the basis of a source editor. You directly edit. You directly edit wiki text. You don't edit the output. Okay. And for a lot of users, that's an entry barrier because you need to know the formatting codes. So if I heard you right, you're saying that you're working on a WYSIWYG editor. Is that right?
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
So isn't this sort of a bit of a lost cause? Because this is something that people have been trying to do for last 10 to 15 years, trying to build WYSIWYG editors on the web. And people always run into some kind of issue or other, and it just becomes too much of a technical challenge to bother crossing, and it's just easier to teach people to work with the formatting. Now,
have you used Google Docs yourself?
Yes, but Google Docs you don't work in the source anymore. You only work in one interface.
Actually, Google Docs operates in the backend on multiple document representations. So it actually is structured technologically in a similar way to the way our editor is structured, except that it doesn't surface the representations to the user. So no, we think it is possible. We think the technical challenge is indeed mostly about the back and forth conversion between the two formats. And we can address some of that if we have to cross that line by saying, okay, if you use markup and you save the page, we're going to do some what is called normalization, which would be to say, actually you can't write this kind of HTML, and the moment you press save, we'll just change it into something that we can understand and cleanly convert back and forth. So if we have to, in order to ensure clean back and forth conversion, we'll put some restrictions on the free-form nature of the wiki text, and we'll just say, okay, certain expressions will be automatically converted into valid expressions the moment you save it and edit, and that'll allow us to more cleanly convert back and forth. But yeah, in general terms, the editing problem on the web has been solved. There are pretty mature editing environments, and Google Docs is not the only one that exists today. So we do think.
Are any of them open source?
No, ours is. Actually, there's one pretty good editing control that I can recommend. We're not using it for a bunch of reasons. It's called Aloha, like the Hawaiian word. It's open source under AGPL and has very powerful capabilities. Lots of people are poking at it and looking at it. It's an HTML5 editor. It's very nice. You should check it out.
Okay. So the related part of it is that if you're editing for the mobile, now rich text controls, mobile browsers are kind of not quite there yet when it comes to editor widgets. I've tried a whole bunch of them, and I could not get any of them to work. Even Google can't get Google Docs to work on mobile. So what is your take on that? You're back to being a wiki text editing environment over there if you actually want it to work, unless, once again, you got this huge hill to cross in terms of cross-browser compatibility.
Well, a couple of things. One is browsers on mobile devices are changing. Chrome is now available for recent Android versions using a WebKit engine that's very similar to the desktop WebKit engine. You've got Firefox available for mobile phones, again, using very similar rendering engines. So a lot of the technical issues are being addressed by the technologies becoming more similar. In addition to that, we are actually, so this is a technical detail, and we can talk maybe after this a little bit in person, but we're not using content editable, which is the browser technology that allows you to edit in a browser in the same way that most of the existing editing environments do. We're using it in a way that we think is going to A, ensure compatibility with mobile, but B, not be subject to some of the same restrictions that previous editing efforts have suffered from. With that said, I will go back to what I said earlier, which is, at the end of the day, what you're going to do is going to be limited by where you are and what device you're using right now. So you're not going to be doing research of bibliographies while you're in a subway. Like, you're going to maybe fix typos, you're going to maybe upload images, but at the end of the day, if you're using your phone in sort of a mobile device kind of way, not as a complete desktop replacement, then you're probably not going to bother writing and composing complex pages on your phone. So we want to support the kind of use cases primarily that are actually likely to occur.
One of the things I find as a user, is somebody waiting to ask? One of the things I as a user of Wikipedia, I find is that is it possible to humanize Wikipedia a little bit more? For example, if I know who the author is, or you know what I mean? It seems like anybody can come in and write anything they want, and therefore the integrity is in question. This goes back to my original question about data integrity. Is there any attempts by Wikipedia to humanize it, to put a face to the articles and say at least important ones or controversial ones? Have you tried it?
Well, so right now every user in Wikipedia has something called a user page, which is sort of a profile page where people write about themselves. So that exists today. And you can go at a history of an article and click on the usernames and learn a bit about them. We're probably going to enrich that a bit going forward to make it a little bit more expressive. But we don't want the personality of the authors to color the content. So what we're probably not going to do is you pull up an article and it shows you a bunch of faces of the people who wrote it. Like, we don't want to get in your face. We want to give you the content that you came for. But we do want to make it motivating and engaging for a contributor to stay there. So there's a balance to strike there. We're not Facebook. We're not a traditional social network. We're an encyclopedia. So our primary objective is to give information to people, but to construct that encyclopedia using modern social technologies and paradigms.
Erik, I have actually 3 questions. I can kind of start with one. There are other people, I can come back to the other questions later. I think one of the biggest problem I had as a wiki editor was the talk pages. So the talk pages are actually doesn't result in a kind of a very productive kind of communication. The threads are kind of distributed all over. I was aware that there is a kind of a liquid threads initiative, and I think it died or something. So what is that is going to happen in the in terms of improving the kind of a discussion?
Just to make that question a bit more understandable. So what Arjuna was asking about were so-called talk pages, which is the mechanism by which discussion takes place on Wikipedia. So you go in an article, there's a little tab at the top that says talk, you click it, and you see the discussion that is occurring on a particular topic. You can take part in that conversation. And the technology that's used right now for that is the exact same technology that's used for editing a page. So you actually have to edit a discussion like you edit an article, which is not very intuitive. It doesn't have like the notion of a reply button and you can just push and it'll give you a little, like you said, like a face next to your comment, things like not there yet. And so the way we're starting solving this problem actually is this technology that I mentioned earlier when I was talking about editing. So the first problem that we're trying to solve for is just explaining to you what's going on, because right now when you get a message or you respond to someone else, the system doesn't tell you anything really. It has a big yellow you have new messages notification, and that's all it does. The way we want to start is just make that more intuitive, integrate it into a standard notifications stream that you have where you actually can follow along, and then start experimenting with a more structured interface for discussion. There is an existing project called Liquid Threads. It's pretty technologically questionable in some of its architectural legacy. So we may or may not use that code base as we develop it further. But the fundamental ideas of the Liquid Thread system were to basically replace a flat page structure with a threaded discussion structure. The other thing I would say is for discussion, really one of the questions that I'm asking myself and that I'm asking our team is, how much does it make sense to think of discussion as just like a separate channel where you've got the article on one hand and then you've got the discussion over there, and there's a pretty sharp dividing line between the two. Like if you look at what Google is doing with Google Docs, then you can sort of go in and highlight a paragraph and you can add an annotation on the right hand side. Someone else can respond to it, which for certain types of comments and interactions is very helpful. And it really links a comment directly to the part of the document that you're responding to. So we may want to experiment with models like this as well, which Liquid Threads doesn't do, to see if it's a more useful way of interacting with Wikipedia articles. But the first step is this, the notification system. We're going to start pushing that out in limited versions in the coming months. And the next step is to solve limited use cases of discussion, possibly starting with things like user-to-user interaction, because the user talk, as it's called, is one of the most broken parts of the interaction right now. So we might start there.
Anybody in the queue? We can come back to me.
So based on what you just mentioned about the comments, like I'm just asking, so as articles are there on Wikipedia, like now there are so many multiple, online publications that have actually comments running down, especially as Wikipedia, where we actually users can go and edit. By having comments in the page, wouldn't it actually contribute to indirectly actually adding information or editing it without going on edit itself and editing?
Yeah, absolutely, and we've been thinking a fair bit about that as well. So we have a system that's running at about 10% of the English Wikipedia right now. It's called article feedback. And the way it works is it asks you at the bottom of the page, did you find what you were looking for? Yes, no. And once you respond, it gives you like a free text field where you can write in, actually I was looking for this and I didn't find it. It gives you like a very lightweight way of saying, hey, there's something wrong in this article, or you should really have this piece of information. And it goes into a stream. It's not shown as comments in the same way. We're a little worried about turning Wikipedia into like the YouTube comment stream where you have to deal with a lot of potentially hateful comments, racism, things like that. We don't want to lower the quality of the experience for a reader. We want to still, again, like I said earlier, focus on the content that we deliver. But we do want to make it possible as a reader to say, actually, you missed something here, and have that go into a review stream where people can look at it and say, there's a bit of useful information that came in through that comment. I want to act on that and edit the article. And one of the things that happens the moment you submit one of those suggestions, you actually also get an invitation to make an edit yourself. So it's sort of intended to inspire more people to participate directly as well.
But just like, for me, what you showed, I have just looking at those things, I've never gone into an editor just looking at the code there, even if I wanted to add, because it's just scary to me, I don't code. So essentially by like having a mechanism the way you're saying, aren't you keeping people like me who'd want to edit out of actually contributing, be it comments or talk, even to be a part of a discussion? You're saying I'll have to edit through the code, right? Like the way how it works in the old editor. So
well, actually, no, that's not what I was saying. So maybe that wasn't clear.
So doesn't the top page function a bit as, even now, as a space for people to comment on an article?
yeah, no, you're saying you need to edit as...
No. This is going to be the new editing interface.
Yeah, that I'm talking about. No,
This is the editor. You don't have to use code.
no, for the talk.
No, same thing. You would use this editor initially.
Okay, so you will be using it?
Well, the first thing would be that you would edit the talk page using this visual interface.
Okay.
So you wouldn't have to, again, use markup. But like I said before in response to Arjuna, initially it still is an unstructured document. So you would be able to go into the document using this interface and write in your comment and maybe click up here to indent it. But it's still kind of messy. It's still kind of broken, right? It's not an ideal user experience. Really, the user experience that you want for a discussion is you see a comment, you press reply, and you can write a reply. And that user experience we won't have initially, but we want to work towards that as well.
One of the projects in which structured data will make a lot of sense is wiki codes.
I'm sorry?
Yeah, one of the projects in which structured data will make a lot of sense is wiki codes, because right now across the wiki codes, not wiki codes, wiki Wiktionary. Most of the wiki Wiktionaries are completely unstructured data as of now, and interwiki links and everything need to be manually formatted before taking that data to some DIO format or something else. So, is there any plans to address such
No.
structurized wiki dictionary?
No, there are no plans right now for Wiktionary, as it's called, which is our dictionary project in terms of doing a technological overhaul of that. I do want to note that when I showed you Wiki Data, it kind of starts to look like a dictionary, and I think people will use it as such whether we like it or not. So you see that you've got like the set of terms here in the different language versions of Wikipedia articles. It's not a dictionary, but even I use Wikipedia and the language links right now sometimes as a dictionary when I'm like looking stuff up. So I think there will be a demand that's going to start being articulated more clearly as Wikidata evolves and evolves for actually having structured information about terms and definitions. Actually, Wikidata supports like a very basic definition notion here. You see a moon of Neptune and that definition can be translated into other languages as well. So it's got some of the foundation, but you know, if you actually ask like a linguist, is this a dictionary? They will probably beat you with a club. So it's not a dictionary in that sense, but it can serve a utilitarian purpose. I think that over time, that is where we have to go. We have to build a structured technology that supports dictionary-style information.
Sorry, can I just ask a question to follow up more, just to find out myself? For Wiktionary, the bridging language would really be English, right? I mean, the data itself would exist in the form of English?
No, why?
For Wiktionary? In terms of bridging words between different languages, what's the, I mean, what is the marker otherwise?
You don't have to bridge anything, right? I mean, the way that...
But how do similar words with similar meaning connect across
well,
different languages?
In a proper structured dictionary, the way you would do it is you type in a word, and the system knows while you're typing that I'm in the English user interface, so I'm probably looking for an English word. And then if you have like a word that has multiple meanings, then it says, do you mean this, do you mean this, do you mean this? Then it pulls it up and gives you a bunch of translations, definitions, and so forth. So there's nothing inherently about a dictionary application that requires tying it to a single language.
Because I think, just to have a remark on that Wiktionary, in the English Wiktionary, all languages try to be present. Similarly, in Telugu dictionary, for example, again English and maybe few other languages, there's a lot of duplication, and there has been some initiative, in the Wiktionary space. People are really coming up with a kind of a concept and representation so that no automatic linkages and duplication avoidance can happen. I forget the name of that project. That is an interesting project that I can share links if somebody is interested in. I will take my next question. I think again it's related to the Wiki Data roadmap. I think the other real problem area now from a user perspective is the templates. There are some nice templates that are there in English, but it is not very easy for me to kind of use it in Telugu. So is this Wikidata going to kind of extend to a template so that the templates are usable consistently across wikis? Is there a timeline for that? Is that in the priority list?
I don't think it's in their roadmap yet. At this point in time, I think right now they're focused on just transporting the data and making it. Then you would have to have a copy of the existing template in each language, and then it would load at the right points the data from the remote repository. I think that's the current plan, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to look it up to be sure. I agree, ideally, there's a lot of things that you want to centrally share beyond just data templates. An example is more code as well. Like JavaScript code is right now being copied in a lot of different places and being reinvented. So over time, hopefully a lot of this stuff will evolve into more of a shared ecosystem of code libraries, data, presentation libraries, and so forth. One exciting development that I didn't mention, it's very technical, but it's still very powerful. Templates, these systems that Arjuna is talking about, which are these guys here, the ones that format a page. So again, like if you, basically in the Wikipedia context, you have like these little sidebar tables, and the template generates that kind of table for you. And so one of the exciting developments is actually how you build these templates. Right now you have to learn some very, very complex markup to do it. And we're working on supporting what's called Lua, which is an embedded scripting language that's increasingly popular in certain domains. We're using Lua for actually programming the underlying logic, the logic that says render this part in yellow or make this part bold or whatever. So you can write it in code, and we actually make that code shareable. So that code will be the first part that's shareable. So with the new Lua templating system, the goal is to have a central Git repository where you can commit actually shared Lua scripting libraries for templates. So while the template presentation as such won't be shareable yet, a lot of the underlying logic will be. So things like, for example, you look at the citation engine in Wikipedia, it's very complex and very messy template code. That code would all be shareable across all wikis that need citations and be improved using Git versioning, so more actual development practices, code review practices being applied to the underlying code. So that's a very powerful concept as well, and one I'm very excited about. So.
that now you can arrange countries by size of GDP. As an example, you gave that.
I said you will be able to with the Wiki Data technology, but you can't yet.
Okay, so what you're trying to do is change the characteristic of the data from text to numerical values. Is it what you're doing, or from doc you're going into Excel kind of a situation?
No.
So what is stopping us from doing that right now? I don't understand that.
Okay, let me try to explain. So this is plain text. The way it gets stored, the way it gets saved in the database is exactly as you see it here. There's a little bit of processing that happens on it, like links are being extracted, but the structure, the keys and the values, discovery equals yes, are not being extracted and made searchable. So if you have a bunch of this information in Wikipedia today, which we do, you can't ask the question because it doesn't exist in a form that would allow you to query it. So what Wikidata actually does is it takes, or it will take in the next phase of the project, some of these key value pairs and you edit them as actual structured information and you store them in a key value database. So then you can ask those questions and automatically generate lists and such. But today that's not possible. Like I said, this template system was invented and created purely for presentational purposes. It was not designed to support querying data.
Erik, so what's the status of the Semantic Mediawiki project?
So Semantic Mediawiki, as it turns out, so can I ask, has anyone else here heard about Semantic Mediawiki? Okay, wow, okay, that's not too bad, but mostly it's the...
It adds data structures to MediaWiki. So it lets you define something like this, but actually store it as a queryable database.
That's right. So Semantic Mediawiki is technology that's been around now for a few years. It extends the same software that we use on Wikipedia called Mediawiki, hence Semantic Mediawiki. And it basically gives you a little bit of extra formatting. Like this formatting wasn't complicated enough already, it just adds a little bit more complexity to it. And by using that complexity, you can then say, for example, if you have the sentence, Berlin is the capital of Germany, the capital of can be annotated as a relationship between Berlin and Germany. And then you can say, show me all the capitals in the world. So it sort of extracts data from actual sentences that you're writing if you annotate them as such. And Semantic Mediawiki was designed primarily for smaller purposes, like smaller databases of content. It doesn't scale well to a size of database like Wikipedia. So we couldn't deploy it or we couldn't use it in Wikipedia today, and it's very hard to make something that wasn't built to scale after the fact. And it also is actually not the right approach for us. And the reason it's not the right approach is that Semantic Mediawiki was built primarily for sharing data within the context of a single community of people. So you have data, let's say, that you want to share about presentations. So you make a conference wiki and you say, okay, every presentation I'm going to upload to this wiki, I'm going to add information about presenters, date presented, and so forth. I'll make beautiful lists of conferences by date. Works well until the point that you decide to add more languages to this conference wiki. So what we want to do with Wiki Data is actually make it possible to share data more easily as well. And that's not a problem that's solved well with Semantic Mediawiki today either. So the objective of Wiki Data is to focus on the sharing aspect and to really get that right. For purposes like I mentioned, you want to bootstrap Swahili Wikipedia with the same country population information you've already added. You should be able to just do that. So Semantic Mediawiki is focused more on the use case of operating in one project, want to add structure and data to it. Very, very powerful technology. In fact, the most powerful available today is open source that you can use as far as I know. So I highly recommend it. The same people who wrote it started the Wiki Data project for the motivations that I just gave you.
Okay, my last question is basically about the PediaPress. I experimented with the PediaPress deployment, for Telugu language in the last year, and so certainly it has improved from what it was 2 years back. But currently still there are certain issues in terms of really producing books from Telugu and maybe from other languages as well. But actually it is a minor problem as I see, because you are able to kind of get the rendering properly for all the inside pages, but the cover pages are kind of not being rendered. when you export, but when you see on the screen, they come out fine. I understood that the PDF process is not doing fine in terms of its own business and so on, but I really wanted foundation to kind of look into and fix these kind of minor things so that it becomes usable and it can help grow the movement. Any updates, anything
That's probably
to
going to
share?
have to remain on your wish list for a while longer, I'm afraid. Pedia Press is a company in Germany, small group like of 3 or 4 people, that's built a tool that lets you actually export a set of articles as a PDF, or even order a printed copy. And gets printed using print on demand, so you get like a nicely bound book of Wikipedia articles that you've selected. You can use it today. It's in the sidebar. It's a little create a book link that you find on every page if you click around on the print/export area of the page. And you can use it today to make books, and it has some weaknesses. Most of those weaknesses, unfortunately, are architecturally inherent in the approach that the technology currently takes to creating these PDF files in printed books. Namely, it actually implements its own parser for converting the wiki text into the PDF representation that you can download. And that parser, of course, doesn't understand everything. They haven't kept it up to date necessarily with everything that is possible. It also uses a rendering engine called ReportMap, which has limited Unicode support, and so support for other languages than English, like support for Indigo languages, is very limited right now. The right approach, in my view, is to leverage the latest HTML5 technologies like CSS regions, and to actually export using the rendering engine of the browser, run in a headless mode, so you can basically run it using the standard browser technologies to export a PDF and render it as you see fit. There are some experiments. There's a platform that's open source called BookType, which is a very cool application which lets you basically author and render PDF files in print quality layout, and it uses those technologies. They have an open source library as part of that called Bookie.js. It uses the WebKit rendering engine, generates print quality PDF. It only works in like the very, very latest browsers like Chrome beta version with certain debugging features turned on, developer features turned on, and then you can basically create print quality content from your browser using the CSS regions feature of the browser to really render it as if it was a book without having additional technology dependencies. Like that would be the direction that I would want to go with this in future, and probably deprecate this legacy technology that generates the PDF files today. And I don't want to invest in like fixing it around the margins. I think at some point we'll just have to replace it. But if you want to do that, go for it.
I thought actually they have done a lot of it, but it is only a little bit some kind of a bug. I have filed the bug and I expected some response. Unfortunately, there is no response.
Yeah, like I said,
because the Unicode was broken a couple of years back for Indic languages, but when I checked last year, it was actually working. It is just the cover page is not coming properly. But
yeah, I mean, I'm sure they would accept your patches if you send them some, but it's a small team. It's like 3 people, and like they're selling some of these Wikipedia books, but it doesn't make a significant amount of money. So they're mostly doing other things as a business.
Have you tried anything in audio? Taking Wikipedia audio?
Well, so there's actually in the larger Wikipedia language versions, there's usually like a spoken Wikipedia project where people take Wikipedia articles and create recordings of them and upload them. So in a few thousand articles, you see at the bottom a little, this article exists as a spoken version, you can listen to it. It still requires a fair bit of effort to actually go through that process of, okay, now I'm going to use Audacity and set up my microphone and read this article. Are you talking about that kind of spoken functionality? Or?
Accessible to everybody. When you're looking at making data accessible to everybody, I see that you have access to mobile also now to so many millions in developing.
Like text to speech as well.
Yes, developing countries, especially where the literacy rate is low. Audio wiki could still give them access to data even without the text.
It could.
Yes.
JAWS should be able to do it fine, right? I mean, so JAWS and other, JAWS, which is the most popular, it's a
right?
proprietary screen reading software.
Well, I think what she's talking
No,
about
I'm
is sort of
talking
combining this with the mobile rollouts.
I'm talking about in terms of accessibility in developing countries, where he was talking about where they did not have access before, but they're having access right now to the population.
Do you know the open source screen reading software?
Well, it doesn't.
I'm
So let
talking
me try
about
to.
we're talking about in developing countries we don't have access, like he said, where they did not have access to internet before, but they have access to mobiles now, internet on mobile. So are they looking at integrating audio at any point, because it crosses the barrier of literacy with that?
Potentially, right? So let me talk a bit about what's happened in that space so far. There is a technology project actually that was run by Timo Leinonen. It was called Mobile Ed, and it was built like 5 years ago or so. And the way it works, so Timo actually had good connections with Nokia, and he worked with them at the time on this pilot. And the way it worked is you SMS a Wikipedia article name to a phone number, and it calls you back, gives you a free callback, and then reads to you the text of the article using text-to-speech software. Festival was the engine they used, I believe. And they ran a pilot, I think it was in South Africa maybe, and I don't think the results were that encouraging. I think part of the issue that I would see with that as a major investment for the foundation is whether or not it really does bridge the gap. Because the gap isn't just necessarily the ability to read the text, it's also the ability to really understand it in the way that it's written right now, with all the complexity, very long sentences, lots of citations, and so forth. So I don't know if it really would bridge the gap. I think it would be useful to do more piloting with that and to see, or to bridge it maybe in combination with alternative versions of articles. I think it's worth experimenting with. Our focus right now is, to the extent that we want to reach people with feature phones, other low-end phones, through the Wikipedia Zero program, is delivery methods like SMS and USSD for plain text delivery of content. And also, of course, the mobile web for folks who have a browser to access it for free using the Wikipedia Zero program.
And I think, sorry, can I just make a suggestion? Just a related problem even with Timo's project is that if you have a human-read article, then that's somewhat legible even when you hear it. But if you have a machine-read article, and presuming that you have some appropriate software to do that, a human-read article, of course, the limitation is that it doesn't capture edits in real time in any way unless it's read all the time. And a machine-read article, I don't know if you've heard, Jaws, it tends to be really difficult to follow. I mean, I think it's not, it doesn't capture punctuation necessarily, or a lot of the other nuances of text.
It's pretty challenging. I mean, the idea of bridging the gap is a very important one. I think the realities will be challenging. I think the realities of making the text understandable, the realities of also answering the right questions, right? Answering the questions in the form that they're actually asked, which is not necessarily show me the article about who, but it might be a very different question.
So you have SMS service, like we can actually send SMS service available where a person can text what they want and they get a text response.
No, he's talking about a very specific experiment that Transcoding.
Well, the SMS thing is about text in, text out. That's right.
Yeah, that's there. Can I get access to it somewhere on the web?
Well, so I think they're going to start the first pilot about it sometime in the next couple of months. I would have to talk to the folks running that program. But there's an open source technology platform which is called Vumi, V-U-M-I. And just in the last couple of days, we actually had one of the lead developers of that project here in Bangalore. It was at the hackathon that we did here, and he extended some of the SMS functionality. So I'm not quite sure what the exact current state of it is, but I can connect you with the right people if you want.
Yeah, Erik, actually, my comment is related to the previous question only. There are a couple of private players as well in this text web kind of space. The Intuit. Intuit has done a text web platform.
Yeah, the text web.
And they demonstrated here, and I also had some interaction with their...
Are folks using it, the text web thing?
Yes, I think, I mean, as of my...
Has anyone heard of text web? 1, 2, 3. Okay, Jeremy, you're actually here. See, Jeremy is the guy who Are you the lead developer? Am I characterizing you correctly?
There are 4 of us, and we're all kind of...
Okay, close enough. So Jeremy is the right person to talk to. He's actually the guy working on Vumi while we were here. The guy right here.
Yeah, just wanted to know, is there any further interaction with the Intuit happening in that space? That is one question. Similar related question is...
So maybe we should actually just hand the mic to Jeremy, because I think he's a lot more knowledgeable about the state of these technologies than
maybe I'll just complete, because the next point is also relevant to the same thing. Like, for the... I know you mentioned about the voice kind of a wiki technology that was researched 5 years back. Recently, I think IBM mentioned a lot of voice web kind of a technology. So, is there any interaction happening with IBM? Will they be interested?
No, as far as I know, not yet. Do you want to talk to some of this stuff, Jeremy?
I didn't really hear all of your question, but the current state of the SMS and USSD project is that you can submit a search query over USSD, select an article, and then select a section within that article, and then you get the text of that section sent by SMS. It's still kind of experimental. The user experience isn't fantastic, mostly because of the limitations on the over SMS and USSD. It's text only. There's no formatting. There are a very small number of characters you can fit into a single message. So we're busy working on finding improvements for that. We're also busy working on an SMS-only version, which doesn't use USSD. The main reason for that is that USSD only works on GSM phones, not CDMA phones. So we need some kind of SMS-only version as well. But the project's all open source, and we've got some new developers working on it from the event this weekend.
And the text web stuff is not open source, right?
I couldn't find it online.
They've released some of the plugins, but not the main engine.
Yeah, the main engine isn't open source, but
Vumi is completely open. So if you want to build on it, extend it.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that kind of connection depends on the operator. The hardest part of the project is actually arranging the connection to the operator. Dealing with mobile network operators isn't the easiest thing in the world. So the technology side is actually fairly straightforward. We just use the Wikipedia API and then have some logic around presenting the results easily. But yeah, the hard part of the project is getting it connected to the mobile networks.
If you're working with Intuit, won't they be dealing with this for you?
Yeah, well, Wikipedia is dealing with, well, Wikimedia Foundation is dealing with the network operators.
You would be the Wikimedia Zero partner. Yeah, that's right. Some of the partners have explicitly wanted us to build the SMS part as part of the agreements with them, because they say that's the best way to reach their audiences. So. Okay, how are we doing for time? Do we want to start wrapping things up? Or?
We have another 10 minutes. Another 10 minutes is there, if there are any questions, right?
Final questions. Let's take 1 or 2 more and then go to lunch.
Yeah.
There's a person here who hasn't spoken yet, so maybe we can...
Sure. Anyway, mine is a short answer. So what is the status of Wikipedia Zero deployment for India? I heard that it will be soon, and
they are
never heard
pretty
again.
close to a launch, and I don't think I can give you the details yet, but they're pretty close.
Hi. Might be a very naive question, but more from a user perspective that I'm asking this. Not completely thoroughly I understand the technical details of this. The thing is, often what I've seen, because I've been editing Wikipedia in English and Telugu, and I've also have a couple of friends working in multilingual environment.
Can you move up a little closer, because I can barely hear you.
Basically, most of us working in India.
Just come
yeah,
up.
that's okay. Yeah, most of us work in multilingual environments, right? Can you hear me? No. Okay. Okay. See, often what happens is we work in Yeah, we work in multilingual environments in India, especially the reality that I'm aware of. Like for instance, I know a bit of English, I know a bit of Telugu, and I know a bit of Kannada, and I can contribute to all these three. Often, especially when you're writing a new article, you feel the need, you're writing it in English, India relevant article, but you could also write it in Telugu, and you could also write it in Kannada. But the thing is, it's like reinventing the wheel 3 times over. So I was wondering, in your editing this thing, when I write it in English, the same text, this thing, can I transliterate and I can, refine it further in the same page? There is an English, then I can do something, do it into Telugu, then I can have a choice to transliterate the bit into Kannada.
You mean
and I can
transliterate or translate?
at least help the machine to do the basic work, not translate. Because often machine translations are not 100% accurate, but I can work on that instead of getting onto the other page and start doing the work. I feel this would help the growth of the Indian Wikipedias a lot. If it is possible technically, and if you'd like to explore, that's one question. And the second thing is. Sometimes, there are, especially when you're working in the vernacular Indic languages, often it is very difficult to find citations. The kind of.
Answer the first question first, because otherwise. Okay, so on the translation stuff, and Sivan, did you hear the question? Because I might want to turn to you for part of the answer as well. Okay, so the question is basically, are we building better tools for doing article level translation and working on articles in multiple languages, so you don't have to do all of it manually as you create like an article and may want to create 3 or 4 versions of it, especially for contexts where folks are already usually capable of speaking multiple languages. So the short answer is that we're not very focused in Wikimedia Foundation on article translation. One part of the reason for that is that actually translation tends to not be very well received in Wikipedia in the community as such. There have been a number of initiatives, including some here in India, doing article level translation into multiple languages, and typically the quality is not at a level where people accept it, and they say, we would rather you just don't bother if you're going to give us content that's half translated or machine translated, even partially. Like to sort of save in Wikipedia an article that's partially machine translated is almost like graffiti to an experienced Wikipedian, because they're like, what, really? You're going to post that to Wikipedia? It's not good enough. So there's a partial issue there with just the perceptional quality and usefulness of content when it's wholly or partially translated. There are some technologies that I think are interesting and relevant to your question, and one of them I'm going to ask Sivan to explain. One is called Wiki Data. It was developed by Microsoft Research, actually here in Bangalore, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right? Yeah. And Wiki Basha, Wiki B-H-A-S-H-A. I don't know if it actually still works, because it was built a couple of years ago. It's open source. I haven't tried it in a while. Has anyone tried it recently? It doesn't. It still works? Okay, so basically Wiki Basha is a bookmarklet. You can drag it as a bookmark into your browser. And then if you're on an English Wikipedia article and you want to start a Canada version of it, it gives you a split screen interface. You can move text over. You can run it against Microsoft machine translation, which I have no idea why you would want to do that, but you could. And you can basically use that as a foundation for starting to write an article in Canada if it has any translation capabilities there. But in general, there are issues with quality of those translations. So our recommendation is to use machine translation at best for augmenting a human translation, if you do any translation at all. The other technology that I want to mention, so Wikibasha is definitely worth checking out. So I'm bashing Microsoft a little bit with their translation engine, but it's a pretty cool project in the way it's built and the functionality that it gives you. So it's worth taking a look at. And the other project is the Translate software that we've built. We build it primarily for our own needs that are more at the software localization level, so the user interface translation, but also document translation for documents like reports or policies and things like that. which it has pretty good support for. It has translation memory support as well. So, Sibun, do you want to talk a little bit about the translate? Okay, go ahead.
So first I want to mention the third possibility, that's the Google Translate Toolkit. Google has done some projects in the past.
No, the mic isn't. It just goes into the audio, the stream.
The microphone is only used for the webcast. So most notably I think Tamil or Kannada Wikipedia, where that project actually caused a lot of uprise in the community. So with regards to the Translate extension for MediaWiki and the community translation site translatewiki.net at meta.wikimedia.org and mediawiki.org, this extension is also active and it's being used to translate documentation in a structured way. And at translatewiki.net we translate MediaWiki, the free and open source software wiki engine, as well as a lot of extensions all used by Wikimedia. And if any of you are suffering from a lack of localization of the software in your language, please visit translatewiki.net, because there you can help your fellow Wikimedians get a more localized experience for your wiki.
And Sivan, do you want to just give your 10-second version of your take on article translation, whether it's worth doing or not?
I support article translation. I've done it myself. I think it's a
And would you
good
want to
way.
use the extension for it?
I don't think that the Translate extension is meant for that, because of two reasons. Source articles tend to change a lot, which would require a lot of updates to keep things in sync. And secondly, the Translate extension only works on a single website, and that's not how our Wikipedias or other websites are arranged.
So one thing I would say is, if you have a need for document translation in a government context or in another context, you can use the software today. You can set up MediaWiki. You can set up the Translate extension for MediaWiki. And so if you have documents that you, for example, want to translate into Kannada and Malayalam and other Indic languages, you could just set it up and ask your community, your stakeholders, to help with actual document translation. And the benefits that it gives you include, other than being free and open, that it actually has support for translation memories. So if you have the same terms that are being translated over and over again, it remembers them, and it gives you the right translation suggestions. And it also has support for identifying parts of a document that have changed. So you've got a, let's say, a legal document that you're translating into Kannada, and the law has changed. Then the relevant part of the document is automatically translated, automatically highlighted in the Kannada translation. So you can say, okay, that part needs to be updated. So that software exists today, and I think Translate has some limited support for augmented machine translation as well, right? So it gives you like suggestions potentially from like Google. Yeah, so from Google and Microsoft. Oh, right.
So we've been asked
Curses.
So for Wikimedia Foundation and for TranslateWiki.net, we're in the process of asking API keys from Google. But that is not something doable for any entity.
That's so sad that they are not doing that. Oh well. Yeah, so if you want to use the Microsoft translation, or you have a Google Translate access in some secret method, then you can use the Translate extension as well to use machine translations as like a basis for starting a human translation. So all that software is there. Cool. So shall we go to lunch?
So it's about 1 o'clock. Yeah. And I guess we continue.
I'll be here. So come find me. All right.
Thank you very
much.
Thank you. It was really fantastic.
That's great. Thank you.